Welcome to my World History Notes, where I read from the book I wrote to teach homeschoolers world history. A Bible Believer Looks at World History. I'm on World War II right now, and you can purchase my book at lulu.com, amazon.com, at the Bible Baptist Bookstore. Just follow me here, subscribe to my channel. On the Battle of the Atlantic, we're going to be discussing that today. And this is just a survey. It's a very surface, superficial, uh, basic. I'm going to throw out names and places, events, and people. And if you're interested, please investigate further, study them, get primary sources where you're reading things people said about themselves or newspaper accounts, journals, letters, and then look at opinions of other historians. But always when you're listening to a historian, try to find out where he comes from. Is he right wing? Is he communist? What is he? Where was he taught? What's his point of view of the world? I'm telling you up front, I'm a Bible believer. Okay, not a fundamentalist, um, not a Catholic, not any other kind of Christian, except a Bible believer. I believe the Bible. So, and I believe the King James Bible. So that gives you an idea where I'm coming from. So what you don't get when you read a lot of historians is they don't tell you up front, oh, remember he's a member of the Communist Party, or he's a member of a far right group, or he ran for president as a Republican or a Democrat. So before I really got into history, got my master's degree, um, I would read things by Pat Buchanan or some other writer, and not even or Thompson, E.B. Thompson, The Making of the English Working Class, and I wouldn't know what their background was or what they were trying to make me think. As I learned that the historian who's writing the history is almost as important as the history, because he puts himself in the history by writing and expressing his opinion and trying to draw you to a certain side, then he becomes part of it. So it's important to understand the person. Look at a news article, and when I look at a news article, say I go to the South China Morning Post, and I look at the person, I read something very interesting. Who wrote it? Where are they from? Who did they work for? Where did they go to school? What do I know about them? Because I want to know what they're trying to make me think. Because there's no such thing as impartial historiography, impartial history writing, and there's no such thing as impartial news. It doesn't exist. So what you want to do is you want to find out who they are and what they think, and that will help you not be deceived. Now, you may not agree with my conclusions, but that's okay as long as you have your own that you've drawn from studying world history. So now I'm going to start the Battle of the Atlantic, and as for that, in spite of the convoy system and the adding to the British merchant fleet a great many Scandinavian ships that had escaped the German invasion of Denmark and Norway, the toll wrought by German submarines on British shipping mounted. 2.5 million tons of shipping had been destroyed by August of 1940. There were not enough warships to provide adequate protection for her merchant ships, and shipyards could not build replacements fast enough. So in September of 1940, FDR agreed to a momentous and controversial exchange in what would be called the Lend-Lease program. The U.S. would give Great Britain 50 old U.S. destroyers in exchange for Britain leasing naval and air bases to the U.S. in Newfoundland, Bermuda, the Bahamas, Jamaica, Antigua, and St. Lucia, Trinidad, and British Guiana. Again, there was some uproar in the U.S. as it was becoming clearer to many people that FDR was putting the U.S. in a position of being at war with Germany without actually sending troops. And I might add, the Communist Party in America was really screaming loud because the Soviet Union at this time was allied with Germany. So they were like screaming, "Don't get involved." They were spouting off all kinds of libertarian stuff about staying isolationist, staying out of the world events. And that changed, of course, when Germany turned on the Soviet Union. Then suddenly the communists abandoned, for instance, the civil rights movement, which they had been very, very powerful in and spent a lot of money in, and abandoned that because now the motherland was being attacked. So anyway, many people of note in America were not isolationists as much as they were non-interventionists. That's a different thing. Isolationists, don't want to be involved in the world events. Non-interventionists is not our place to intervene in this, that, and the other. And the enemies of those people, we'll call them isolationists, which is not what they are. They felt that the oceans provided us with enough security without helping the morally bankrupt and corrupt European powers carry on their latest round of never ending war. The facts were much more complicated than this. America, at least since 1898, when it had acquired Spain's colonial possessions after the Spanish American War, was a global power, an empire, and could not simply ignore world shaking events without risking its material welfare and place among the nations. Some more cynical historians have provided evidence that Roosevelt was actually hoping the war would last long enough for America to actually get into it. Sorry about that. Want to make sure that cat wasn't tearing the screen out. The question is, what would prompt Americans to accept getting involved with troops? Roosevelt himself in a speech had announced that he would never send American boys to fight in Europe. Never say never. Back in the Atlantic, the captain of the British cruiser Jervis Bay sacrificed his ship to hold off the German pocket battleship Admiral Scheer and permit 32 ships of its convoy to escape. As control of the Mediterranean was vital to Britain, Mussolini planned to seize the Suez Canal. He also planned an invasion of Greece. Churchill rushed Britain's sole remaining armored division to Egypt. The Italians had 5 times as many troops as the British had available to fight in North Africa and in Palestine. Mussolini attacked the strategic island of Malta with bombers and literally thousands of raids. In September of 1940, Italy invaded Egypt, but the valiant British force repulsed them and threw the Italians out of Egypt. Italy then invaded Greece, but was thrown back by the Greek defenders. The Greeks counterattacked and drove the Italians almost out of the country. As Malta was being strengthened and resupplied, British troops occupied Crete. Naval action saw Italy defeated by Britain off Calabria and at the Italian naval base of Taranto. In the Atlantic, German Admiral Karl Dönitz U-boats, organized in groups of submarines called wolf packs, continued to wreak havoc with British shipping on its efforts to obtain supplies from America. Long-range German bombers united with the wolf packs to destroy shipping. Britain's answer to the U-boat bomber menace was called the escort carrier, which in the first instance of the HMS Audacity was a merchant ship with a flight deck attached. German surface raiders continued their work until 1941. The giant German battleship, the Bismarck, was the largest and most powerful warship in the world at that time. The entire British Navy in the Atlantic practically was sent to attack it. At the Battle of Denmark Strait, the Bismarck blew up the battlecruiser HMS Hood and severely damaged the new battleship, the Prince of Wales. Finally, the HMS carrier Ark Royal slowed the Bismarck down, and the battleships Rodney and George V engaged it in a terrific gun battle. The cruiser Dorsetshire finally sank the Bismarck with torpedoes, drowning 2,300 German sailors. The Lend-Lease Act of 1941 had given the American president the right to provide goods and services to Great Britain. In April of that year, to prevent the possibility of German invasion, FDR placed Greenland under U.S. protection, quote unquote. American troops were garrisoned in Iceland. At the Atlantic Conference in August, Roosevelt and Churchill met on warships docked at Newfoundland, pledging their countries to preserve world freedom and to improve conditions after the war was over. At the same time, Roosevelt announced that American warships would escort all North Atlantic convoys west of Iceland. This is interesting, as some scholars put it, that one nation that had conquered much of the world, Great Britain, and had been responsible for much injustice and oppression, and another nation which was notorious, America, for its own maltreatment of Black and Native Americans, plus its brutal suppression of revolts and uprisings in the Caribbean and the Philippines, would announce themselves to preserve a, quote, world freedom that didn't exist. The improvement of conditions after the war was perhaps a reference to improving conditions for their commerce and their influence to grow. And yet clearly, these are the good guys. And there will be quite a demand for freedom and a very long, protracted Cold War between communism and the West after World War II. Before we get into North Africa, I just want to point out that we're going to be talking about North Africa and Hitler and Joe Stalin and turning on, Hitler turning on Russia and that kind of thing next, as in the next few sessions. So my book just goes up to the end of World War II, and then I'll be discussing in special topics that aren't in the book after that. So things will change a little bit. But I hope you'll study world history and really come to your own conclusions. And it's fascinating. World War II is just amazing. So on my Facebook page, day by day, I've been doing World War II since or 2019 for 1939. So now I'm in July 30th, 1942. So I hope that you'll study world history. Thank you very much.